In Ambulance, brothers Jake Gyllenhaal and Yahya Abdul-Mateen attempt to rob a bank, only things go south and they take an ambulance, a wounded police officer and a paramedic hostage, while sending the police on a chase across the city. Ambulance is a Michael Bay movie. If you know that name, that means you'll expect plenty of explosions and action with moments of levity and glitz and glamorous locations. Ambulance is the quintessential Michael Bay movie, delivering all of those elements in spades. In fact, it's actually one of his best movies in many years. The story and concept are at times inconceivable and pushes the boundaries of believability, but the frenetic pacing and constant action and energy means that it's never boring, always entertaining. This is a good, fun summer blockbuster type movie. Additionally, the characters are a little cliche and underdeveloped, but the film and the actors do enough to make them likeable. The biggest issue with the film is that of the camera work and direction. The camera is constantly in motion, shaking, panning, bouncing, and at times flying by locations. It's arguably stylish and cool, but it distracts from the story and the characters far too often, and it's also somewhat nauseating.
You bastard.
I may be a bastard, Mr. Thorburn, but you are a fool. And of the two, I think I know which I prefer.
Julian Fellowes, best known for Downton Abbey, returns to TV with The Gilded Age, which in many ways is an American version of Downton Abbey. It has all the snobby characters, elegant dresses and outfits, and extravagant sets and locations you would want. It's also essentially a soap opera about rich people in the 1800s. The story focuses primarily on two families, one living in the past and one pushing for the future. There are some interesting moments here and there where these ideals clash. The story primarily focuses on snobby women's quests for power and prestige and romance. It does become a little repetitive across the 9 episodes when the characters are solely focused on one of these things. The cast is great, although there are too many characters in the show. Many of the characters have small subplots clearly intended to develop it further in future seasons. But many of these characters are currently one-note and uninteresting, getting lost in the crowd of characters. The story has plenty of twists and surprises, the key cast are great, and the overarching narrative will please some people looking for something akin to Downton Abbey. But while there are similarities, this is not Downton Abbey, and it has a long way to go to become that if it's even striving to do so. The Novice is a sports drama thriller about a young woman determined to become the best rower she can possibly be, even if it means shunning her friends and teammates in the process. This is a tough film to like. It's very well made, written and crafted, but it focuses on a character who is deliberately unlikable and who is essentially the villain of the film. It's hard to invest in a narrative when you don't like the main character and you don't want the main character to succeed. Sadly, the film failed to make me care about the main character's quest and goal. The film is also, in certain regards, the rowing version of Black Swan. There are some psychological thriller moments throughout the movie that really highlight and emphasize the psychological elements of the main character. It does a good job of portraying her struggles. The Novice is very well made, and while the main character is fully developed and fleshed out, the fact that she is so unlikable makes this a tough film to watch.
Yo, what the hell is that?
It's a grenade I tied to a Russian tank shell.
Why not just the grenade?
Grenade blows up like 2 people.
How many people does this blow up?
I don't know. I invented it this morning.
What?
Eat peace, mother.
Peacemaker, the spin-off of James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, is one of the most unabashedly fun and entertaining shows I have seen in a long time. This is James Gunn giving us the most quintessential James Gunn content ever. The show is funny, at times hilarious, at times crude and inappropriate, and filled with action, heart and emotion too. It has everything. The main cast of characters are surprisingly good, with many of them being small supporting characters from the Suicide Squad. It's impressive just how much more interesting they are now as opposed to their portrayal in that film. John Cena has cemented himself now as a pretty good actor in both action and comedy. He has a way of delivering lines that can make us laugh and in the next moment break our hearts. The comedy of Peacemaker may be divisive. James Gunn's approach to comedy is very much like a long-range shotgun blast. Many of the bullets will hit their target, but some are going to miss wildly. That's what happens with the comedy in Peacemaker. Some jokes work very well, others are duds. Peacemaker is one of the most surprising, fun and entertaining shows I've seen in a while. It's an added bonus that it's also very well made and crafted, and it's part of the larger DCEU.
Battle station! Snowpiercer.
The third season of Snowpiercer is probably its worst yet. At this point the characters and the story are going in circles, repeating cycles and actions and rivalries that happened in prior seasons, purely so the show can reach its intended destination in the finale. Characters rekindle old rivalries, factions continue to battle it out, allegiances change, it's happened all before and it's happening again. Luckily, Snowpiercer continues to have fantastic sets and lighting and production. It's a very good looking show with some thrilling moments of action and suspense. I just wish the characters had more to work with, that the story felt like it was progressing naturally without surprise elements being forced in just for the sake of a surprise element. On top of all of that, the middle of this season starts to linger and the story becomes dull and boring, with one episode which, while well made, is completely pointless and throwaway, taking place entirely in a dream vision. Snowpiercer is at times so close to being good, it just sadly never becomes it. There is a lot to like about this show, but the story at the core of it and the characters are often lacking in development and interest.
Michael Morbius.
Discover who you're meant to be. The bad guy.
Morbius.
Morbius is not a film you can sink your teeth into, mainly because it's a film that has a surface level story with little purpose, meaning or messaging, and it tells that story with characters that also lack depth. This is yet another Sony movie desperately trying to pretend it's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film is fairly competently made, it tells a cohesive story and it hits the beats, and it moves along at a good pace. The problem is that it's quite bland and boring. The film is devoid of any emotion or excitement or fun. While it's better than both of the Venom movies, at least those films had a certain fun factor, albeit unintentionally. Morbius is a generic, straightforward superhero origin story. It doesn't do anything original or unique, its action and special effects are weak, its humour is bad and its characters are boring. Luckily, this is not a Marvel movie. Vikings Valhalla sets sail on Netflix. It's an 8-episode sequel series to History Channel's Vikings, although it's set some 100 years after that show, meaning you don't have to have seen it. The show is really fun and action-packed. Its story and characters are exciting and thrilling, with battles, surprises, twists and turns, political deceit and betrayals and more. This show really helped fill that Game of Thrones shaped void in my life, and that's the best I can say about it. Its story is sometimes too straightforward and traditional, its cast and acting isn't the greatest, but is by no means bad, and it shows its budget here and there, particularly in action scenes. But it's so much fun, its episodes are often brief and exciting and fast, its minor flaws are not a hindrance at all.
All that I need to get by.
Coda, The Academy Award-winning film is one of the best films I've seen this year. As you can tell, I watched it a little later than I should have, but I loved it. Here, the one non-deaf member of a deaf family must balance their education, their dreams, and the family business. It's a stressful time, and she and the family must come to terms with the changes they're going through. The film is gorgeous with beautiful locations and lighting. The acting is fantastic across the board, with each actor bringing their character to life, making them incredibly likeable, charming, and relatable. This is also a surprisingly cheerful film. When you see this as a film about a deaf family, you probably get a false impression of the mood and tone, but it's very funny and enjoyable, with little in the way of deep, heavy, depressing content. I thoroughly recommend Coda. The most recent season of South Park is in many ways a return to form. The comedy is great, it's constantly funny and relevant. An episode about Token actually being named Tolkien is quite hilarious and at times delivers a good message and is quite relevant. The animation of South Park has never been the greatest, deliberately so, but this is more or less just more South Park. The biggest issue was that this season was only 6 episodes long. It was really short, and just when things seemed to be building up and getting going, it ended. It took me several weeks to realise that it had finished, because typically South Park takes a week or so off here and there. The length of this season is disappointing, but the quality of the episodes we got is quite good.
Loretta Sage?
Getting you out of here.
Why are you so handsome?
My dad was a weatherman.
Hey, whoa, she doesn't need saving in there.
Okay.
What are you doing in there?
The Lost City has author Sandra Bullock being kidnapped by millionaire Daniel Radcliffe, who wants her knowledge and helping him discovering the Lost City. Meanwhile, cover model wanting to prove himself, Channing Tatum rushes in to rescue the author in distress. If you've ever seen lost treasure adventure films akin to Romance in the Storm before, then you know exactly what the Lost City is. There are no surprises, no twists, no elements whatsoever that subvert the expectations of the formula. That's a bit disappointing, but also somewhat comforting. If you want a fun adventure film with good characters and decent comedy, this will do the trick. The comedy isn't as funny or as prevalent as I'd have wanted or expected, but it's there and it does a decent enough job at getting laughs. The action is limited and impressively commented on by the characters in the film. After all, these are people who have never seen a dead person nor killed anyone. The Lost City is fun and enjoyable, but it isn't anything new. I'd recommend it if you just want to pass some time and have a bit of a laugh with some thrills.
When you share a sense of humor with someone, you make each other better. When you get big, there's no sense of excitement, no risk that people are going to hate you.
Oh, come on. Plenty of people can still hate you.
That was good.
In Hacks, Asian comedian Gene Smart is saddled with a cancelled upcoming comedy writer in hopes of rejuvenating both of their careers. Hacks is one of the best comedy shows in recent years. It's consistently funny, often hilarious with fantastic acting and characters, great uses of location, and it's also just very well made and written. Hannah Einbender, in what is essentially her first role, is amazing as the young writer. She and the writing make her a fully detailed, fully fleshed out character very quickly, and she holds her own against the more experienced and equally as fantastic Gene Smart. Mixed in with the comedy is a healthy dose of drama and soap opera. It explores ideas around cancel culture, inappropriate jokes, aging, fame and more, and it never loses track of the tone or mood, never becoming overly serious or overly funny. Hacks is in many ways a modern day Entourage, only with women who are comedians. It's a great new show and one of the best new comedies in recent years.
I will avenge you, Father.
I will avenge you, Father.
I will save you, Mother.
I will save you, Mother.
I will kill you, Philip.
Northman is a brutal and intense Viking Norse revenge film by Robert Eggers. Here, Alexander Skarsgård seeks revenge for the murder of his father at the hands of his uncle. The story of the Northman is its least impressive aspect. It really is very simple and straightforward, a revenge tale, with slight fantastical and mythical elements here and there, as well as some more psychological elements thrown in too. Visually, the film is stunning with muted colours and tones giving it a dark and gritty feel. The score is also great with booming, intimidating drums heightening the tension. The cast and characters are good, but some of them aren't given a whole lot to say or do. They each bring their characters to life, but none of the characters are all that interesting. The Northman is also a little long and at times a little slow. When it focuses in on the story and the gory, realistic action, it's enjoyable, but at other times it's a tough sit through. It won't be for everyone.
What's happening?
What is it we actually do here?
Severance is one of the best shows this year. It's a bit like Lost meets Black Mirror, where employees of a mysterious corporation undergo a procedure that separates their workday memories from their private memories, essentially giving them two distinct lives to live. Severance does a great job at developing and teasing mysteries, and by the end of the season it answers some of them in very satisfying and dramatic ways. Sometimes the show is a little slow, but once you get used to the pacing it's very engaging. The themes and messaging are intriguing with religious connotations and more. I really liked Severance. The season finale itself is one of the best things I've watched in a long time. If you want a more detailed review, there's one on my channel now.
In the hidden war, the truth is protected by a bodyguard of lies. Its soldiers unseen, pray. Its heroes unsung. This is our war.
Operation Mincemeat tells the real-life story of Britain's attempt to divert Nazi attention away from their planned attack. This film is an enjoyable one, but also a very traditional World War biopic. Its fun is primarily within the plan itself, to find a dead body, develop a believable backstory for the body, and then dump the body near Spain. This results in numerous clever moments, several funny moments, and lots of thrills and twists and surprises. What lets the film down is the subplot concerning a love triangle. The romantic elements of the film are not all that interesting and seem to exist solely to give the female characters something to do in the film beyond just being there as secretaries. This part of the film also serves as the primary form of character development, but sadly, while the actors are great in their roles, their characters are not that compelling or original. Operation Mincemeat is fun at times, but certain aspects let it down, and at the end of the day, it's just another World War biopic amongst a large crowd of World War biopics.
You should be aware that I am very good at settling scores.
When I get big game in my sights, I can't lower my rifle.
In Season 6 of Billions, Corey Stoll takes over as the big bad. Sadly, this transition is not a seamless one, and the result is that Billions has went from being one of the best things on TV to one of the most disappointing. This season of Billions is not good, although the final few episodes do pick up in quality. It's just a shame that the first 2/3 of the season are a slog with very little direction. The acting and the sets and the production are the same high quality. Corey Stoll is quite good as the new villain, but his motivations are often vague and unclear. Other characters have not fared too well either, with Wendy being practically unimportant anymore. It's a shame that the loss of Damian Lewis has caused so many problems with the overarching narrative, as well as the arcs of certain characters. The 6th season of Billions is not good. It's the worst of this show's history by far, and a good indication that the show should have ended when Damian Lewis left. It does, however, improve significantly towards the end.
You
Nicolas Cage is the sort of actor you either love or hate. Notably, not all of his films are major successful blockbusters. Here, he plays himself, his career at a low point, and he takes an offer he can't refuse. He goes to a wealthy man's birthday party as a VIP guest, but that man might be a major criminal. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is a fun, quirky comedy boasted by two fantastic lead performances. Nicolas Cage is portraying himself, and he does a good job at providing his character with lots of depth and nuance, showing a vast array of emotions and range. Meanwhile, Pedro Pascal is as charming and as charismatic as ever, and together they create a lovable duo. Much of the humour of the film is provided by the shenanigans that these two get up to. However, not all of the jokes land, and most of them aren't as funny as they should be. If you've seen the trailer for this film, then you've seen the best the film has to offer. Luckily, the film features decent thrills and action moments to make up for it, and it's well paced, never slowing down or growing boring, so when the jokes don't work, it moves on pretty quickly. The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is fun, but not as fun or as good as I had wanted it to be.
When does the show start?
The final season of Killing Eve is disappointing. After years of building up and developing a story focused on taking down the infamous 12, it's disappointing that the final season looks and feels incredibly small scale and insignificant. This is most likely the result of a budget limitation. After all, it could not produce sets and provide a large enough cast on the scale of a Bond movie. But at the same time, it feels like an insult to develop the 12 in such a way only to make the result such a small thing. In terms of resolution, Killing Eve is also very disappointing. It ends in a lackluster, anticlimactic way with little closure and even less satisfaction. The show does a good job at times at exploring the psychology and relationships of certain characters and in giving them clear motivations and goals. It just fails in wrapping it all up in a grand, satisfying way. Killing Eve was once one of the best shows around. Sadly, this season has squandered it all. Luckily though, Jodie Comer is great as per usual.
Ronald, I'm just requesting assistance here.
Caught on the fence again, O'Leary.
It's not something that normally happens to me.
I've got a question. If we identify a UFO, does that just mean it's an FO?
The ghosts and ghouls are back in season 4 of Wellington Paranormal. This is yet another decent outing for the cops of Wellington, one that dives into the characters a little bit more and continues to create outlandish, slapstick moments for them. One of the things Wellington does well is work within its limits. It cannot convey large, fantastical creatures with incredible CGI, so it works around that in some clever ways. Although this season does feature a few too many possessions, clearly used to disguise budget limits as well as provide some slapstick comedy. There are episodes that really do a good job at establishing and upping the stakes, making the show seem more important than usual too. The finale, for example, is a good homage to Back to the Future. The comedy is at times very smart and fun, and at other times a little lazy and predictable. The characters aren't the greatest either, but this season does a better job at fleshing them out. Overall, it's more Wellington Paranormal, which is good if you like that thing. In Heels, a small-town wrestling league is struggling to bring in the audience. At the front of this league are two brothers, button heads and rivaling, both in and out of the ring. Heels, like the storylines in wrestling, is essentially a soap opera with a decent-sized budget. It has family arguments, twists and turns, wrestling action, talks about past relationships and more. It isn't the greatest thing ever made. Sometimes it focuses on more mundane aspects of the wrestling industry, and sometimes it focuses far too much on wrestling to the point of breaking believability. Why is wrestling literally the only thing these people talk about? And why do they all act like it's real life? There are some bizarre moments like this throughout the show that break the immersion and aren't adequately answered or addressed. Overall though, it's well acted. Its sets and locations are great, with lots of atmosphere and character. Its storylines aren't the most original or inspired, but it has some decent themes and messaging. If you're a wrestling fan, it's a must watch. Otherwise, this is a pretty decent show with lots of potential in the future.
We don't belong here.
You're a time traveler.
I prefer the term time prisoner.
The first season of Russian Doll was a smart, fascinating, experimental and funny show. It was great. It's therefore very disappointing to see that the second season of Russian Doll is very different from the show's prior season. This time around, the time loops are gone. Instead, Nadia is contending with a time-traveling train and some trippy visual elements to change her family's past to better her present and future. The story and setup this season aren't all that interesting. It doesn't help matters when the main character doesn't seem all that fazed by the weird goings on initially. If she doesn't care or isn't scared or worried, why should we, the audience, care? If all is normal to her, then there's really no conflict or problem to overcome. On top of that, this season almost completely gets rid of the comedy. It's instead going for a very traditional, if at times trippy, science fiction drama. The show is well directed with some creative angles and some cool visuals. It's also pretty well acted, but the story is lacking, the characters aren't that compelling, and the quirky fun element of the first season is completely absent. The second season of Russian Doll simply isn't the same show anymore. It's very disappointing. This month I would highly recommend the film Coda if you haven't already seen it. If, unlike me, you saw it when it first came out, then I would instead recommend The Northman. It won't be for everyone, but its score, atmosphere and brutality are worth experiencing. On the TV front, Severance is the show I would recommend most. It's fascinating and intriguing, and it all leads up to one of the best season finales I've seen in a while.